Welcome to Season 3 of Under the Sisterhood, Women Making the World Healthier. Our conversations will focus on the themes of women's health and wellness with a new episode every Friday until the end of the year. We will discuss topics ranging from sexual health to mental health while learning from the accomplished practitioners who make women's healthcare possible. This is a podcast to celebrate women and all they do in our world. I'm Elizabeth Elfenbein. Let's get under the hood. Today we're getting under the hood with Shannon Cohn, a mother, daughter, friend, women's advocate, lawyer, social impact producer, and filmmaker. Shannon has worked across Africa, Europe, and the Middle East and the Americas on topics related to gender equity and combating stigma and taboo. Her films and TV series have aired on PBS, National Geographic, Discovery Channel, Amazon, and Netflix. And her new PBS documentary, Below the Belt, executive produced by Hillary Clinton and Rosaria Dawson, approaches endometriosis as a social justice issue. The film is one element of a larger social impact plan to create meaningful change in endometriosis and women's health, including increased research funding, policy changes, medical education initiatives, and widespread awareness. Her previous film, ENDO What, was called The First Step in a Plan for Change by NEWSWEEK and Film of the Year by The Guardian. Before becoming a filmmaker, Shannon practiced international law and was part of the legal team that prosecuted Enron in the largest white-collar crime investigation in FBI history. She has had endometriosis and has 2 young daughters who have a 7 times increased risk of having the disease. Wow, welcome, Shannon. What an intro.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here.
Well, I'm so thrilled to have you. Today, it's women making the world healthier, and the work you've been doing, the creative work, the social justice work is just tremendous. And so if it's okay, I'd love to get going.
Yes, let's do it.
So I ask every woman this question, and it's a simple one, but it's so unique to each of you, which is if you can share the journey that got you to where you are today, that if you could take us on a journey about becoming a filmmaker and in the health space and what brought you to where you are, it would be wonderful.
Sure, of course. I mean, I think like so many of us, where we are today is a mixture of personal and professional. They're not mutually exclusive and definitely inform the other. And that's certainly, my case. Personally, I mean, I can say as a teenager, I first had symptoms of endometriosis, which I didn't know what they were, of course. Debilitating pain. I had GI symptoms, migraines, and and fatigue. And, really going, it seemingly overnight from a very healthy, active, straight A student, an athlete, to really kind of everybody scratching their head, including the healthcare providers around me, of like what in the world was going on with me. And heard a succession of comments from my pediatrician, OBGYN, things like, oh, it's part of being a woman, suck it up. Maybe it's in your head, maybe I'm exaggerating, maybe I'm trying to get attention. And I remember feeling incredibly confused during this time because I was definitely not trying to get attention with these symptoms. If anything, and like so many women, I was minimizing them, because I was embarrassed and felt weak because I was having the symptoms. So if anything, I was downplaying them, but then was being, told by people in positions of authority that I was, no, in fact, the opposite, exaggerating. And, it's a really confusing time, I think, for anyone of any age, but certainly a teenage girl. So basically, I went 13 years before I heard the word endometriosis. And that was while going to college and going to law school and having a demanding career, doing all of those things. And like so many of us, we just kind of suck it up and do it. Like I was scheduling important meetings around when I thought I would be in the most pain, or when I had certain doctor's appointments. And it just became part of my life, without really questioning, like, what is going on here? Why does it have to be this way? It shouldn't be this way, you know? So basically I did hear the word endometriosis at 29 and pursued different treatment options, finally found one that works for me. And I should say, like, you know, endometriosis, I'm sure if anyone listens, it's like so many women's health conditions that have been historically under researched, you know, dismissed, undervalued. We have more questions than answers on these conditions, and endometriosis is emblematic of so many others. So, you know, the treatments are not clear cut, you know, and they certainly weren't for me. And they remain, you know, kind of a mystery about what works for one person versus another. I just wanted to put that disclaimer out there. I think it's important to, you know, to address. But basically, during that time professionally, I was a lawyer. I was had a demanding career, and just decided that I wanted to do something else, you know, with my life, and ended up going to film school at NYU and working in New York as a filmmaker at an independent production company for many years. And the company was really on the forefront of building social impact campaigns around films, around social justice issues. And I was really lucky in that respect because I developed that skill set of really looking at film and storytelling as a mechanism for catalyzing change, beyond the theater, beyond, you know, your TV screen. What can film and what can storytelling actually do to change the world in which we live? So basically, I came here because I will say another personal is I do have two young daughters, like you said in the intro, and it was really them that propelled the work that I do now. The thought that they have a 7 times increased risk of having this disease, of traveling the road that I have traveled, was really pretty a devastating thought to me. And I think that's like so many of us, like we fight for ourselves, but when someone we love is threatened, whether it's our child or a parent or a partner, a sibling, anyone we love, I think we fight in a different way. Like a fire, almost like the fire even burns brighter sometimes. And the thought of my two innocent, you know, babies going through the hell basically that I had, it propelled me to really put a lens on this, on these issues, on endometriosis, but the larger issues at play as well within women's health, to say, hey, it's time that we look at this, and it's time we do something about it, and maybe these films can be part of that.
Wow. First of all, thank you for sharing. I mean, your story is, I have goosebumps. I can feel it. It's a very visceral story. Any woman will feel Shannon's story. There's so much to unpack here. You're doing so much with the filmmaking and the storytelling and the social advocacy, all of the work you're doing, getting in and with the policy changes that we described in the introduction. But I think you hit on something, you know, with the fire under you as it relates to your daughters, which is closing that gap to diagnosis. And so I think that I'm just hearing this, your story. I mean, 13 years before there was even a label to attach to significant pain, and the fact that you had to jerry-rig your entire life around this when it would come. And I can't even imagine, like, that adds a whole other level of anxiety to the pain. So you have the pain, but then you're anxious, like, when's it coming? When's that flare up coming? So I feel good today. And it's like, and you're like literally living one day at a time. So it, you know, it would be great. So when you found out at 29 that this is what it is, endometriosis, what was your like first feelings? And then talk about how you went through looking at treatment options at that time.
Mm-hmm. You know, I think it's like so many people who go for an extended period of time with symptoms that are confusing or trying to find answers. The first is almost like relief, just that you have a name to what's going on. It's a relief. Even if it's something really scary, even if it's something where, you know, the treatment is not clear cut, or your fertility or other things, you know, your health is compromised, at least you have a place to start. You know, okay, well, this is what we're dealing with. So then you feel grounded in that way to try to find the answers. So basically, of course, I always say there are two vortexes with something like endometriosis. The first is the long delay to diagnosis and trying to find, the answer, which the average delay to diagnosis is 6 to 10 years, and that's worldwide. And the second is this search for finding effective treatment. The reality is that the vast majority of OBGYNs, which is typically treated as a gynecologic disease, it's a whole body disease. It's been found in every organ in the body. It's definitely not just relegated to the pelvis. So, but most people do start with the OBGYN, and the reality is the vast majority of OBGYNs, for sure, in the United States are just not well equipped to deal with a disease like endometriosis, which is complicated, which is individual. And they just don't have, they just haven't had the training or the skill set. They're delivering babies and they're doing a great job at that. And they're doing a lot of other really important things, but the reality is that they're generalists, and a disease like endometriosis should be treated by a specialist. Like when someone is diagnosed with cancer, for example, there's an automatic referral to a specialist, as it should be. And we are advocating for the same, with endometriosis. You really should have someone who treats endometriosis day in and day out, treating this disease to have the best type of outcome. So that didn't happen with me initially. Of course, my OBGYN, who delivered one of my babies and is a lovely person, attempted to do surgery, attempted, different medical treatments, and nothing was working. If anything, it was making things worse. And she just, was kind of scratching her head over it because, she didn't have the information, and it was kind of confusing. So basically, by luck, I was in New York and, literally Googled OBGYN near me. It was by NYU, and walked into an office, and someone happened to recognize right away it was, I needed a specialized surgery. So that's what happened. And since then, I think it's important to have that type of surgery. So basically, I walked into this doctor's office in New York, and she said right away, like, you need a specialized surgery, and put together a multidisciplinary treatment plan. And that really has put me on a course to really be in control of my health. It's not a perfect plan, but I felt empowered, and educated to say, okay, this is a great place to start, and really looking at things that work for me, from diet to physical therapy to medications. It's not just one thing. And I think that that's really important for people to understand that, disease like endometriosis isn't something where you can go into a doctor's office, unfortunately, and just say, hey, cure me, give me a medicine. It's just not that. It's not that. Right now, it's just a condition that the patient really has to be in the driver's seat, so to speak, and take control.
Well, thank you for that. I have to say, to the audience, that I was so fortunate to attend an opening for Shannon's Below the Belt film, and Shannon was in the audience, so I got to meet her. But witnessing that documentary, where I think it was, I don't know if it was 3 or 5 patients, because this was back in the summertime, we went on a journey of their experience, both to diagnosis, to treatment, to the ongoing, what their life looked like in dealing with this pain. And then also the physicians. I think it was very educational. I have been very fortunate. I did not suffer from that. Of course, as a mother, I have 2 daughters as well. I worried about everything from PCOS. My daughters had different, we experience our periods differently, and it's interesting. So, when they say when you try to get pregnant, you're probably going to experience what your mother went through. So you think about all these things, and I know that's a little ancillary, but you think about things like periods. Well, I didn't have these types of pains. My daughters have greater pains. So it's all of that. So I was very conscious of it as a mother, but I wasn't experiencing it. And I'm trying to make the experience of witnessing your film as a woman and a mother, like, holy cow, this is really important. The education around endometriosis and women, not feeling stigmatized, not feeling shame because they have pain during periods, particularly at a young age. We're going through so much change. It is brutal being a young woman going through puberty, but then to experience this and not to feel seen or heard. Can you, Shannon, I don't know if you felt like in your home, was your mother supportive? Did you feel in your family that they understood that you were really in pain?
Well, I was in a unique situation. I was actually raised by single parent, my father, as we say in the South, because I'm Southern. Bless his heart. Bless his heart. He tried. He really tried, and he passed away now, unfortunately. But it was just kind of like a mystery to him. I mean, he was certainly there with me and doctors, in the waiting room of the doctor's office, and trying to help. And as I would have stomach aches and just disappear for an hour, and he would just be like, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" And it was really hard on him and me. And we kind of that mystification of basically periods and menstruation, that happened pretty quickly with him dealing with a
It's
daughter.
really interesting, Shannon, because one of the young women that you portrayed that was in your documentary, it was her father who was the primary caregiver. And so it's really interesting. So that just makes total sense and really important to acknowledge. Because I think the other thing I'm trying to get at in asking that question is the difference in generations. For instance, my daughter will have, at one point she's going to have a baby. She's 30 now, and she will know things that are, and you're at a different generation than me, that maybe our generation or the generation before us might not recognize because people are becoming more aware. So as you've experienced putting your film out there and you have this desire to help and ensure that your daughters don't experience what you experience, have you noticed that intergenerational shift in acknowledging pain as a real thing?
Of course. I mean, I think things are absolutely changing. I have a 16-year-old daughter, and she talks about her period like she talks about what she's going to have for lunch. And I kind of love it, of course. I mean, she talks about it with her friends, and I'm, part of me is like, is it because I'm her mother and I just talk about periods very matter of factly, or is it a generational like awakening? And I think it's a little bit of both. But because I also hear her friends, they just talk about it, I mean, I have great hope for these younger generations coming up, and the idea that, everything's game. Let's talk about everything. Like, she just amazes me with the things that the insight she has on different, things that, I probably didn't have until I was 30, and I'm just like, wow, this is amazing. You're just brilliant. And, she's like, Mom, everybody knows this. This is not anything I've done. I'm like, great. I mean, it's the information age, I definitely think we're going toward an era where all of this information is, widely available and out there and accepted, and conversations are happening in a very nuanced and important way. I think it's important that we all keep pushing that direction and keep nurturing, our sons and our daughters and all of the people coming up in these next generations, so that they feel safe and empowered to have these discussions. And yeah, I have great hope.
Well, the work you're doing is amazing because you're educating, you're showing, you're demonstrating, you're taking people into reality, to real world, and you're doing it. And it's such a beautiful film. And I think what's interesting is just I don't want to say it's not depiction because it's real life, it's a documentary, but the way you were able to really find these young women and at various stages of their experience, from diagnosis to treatment, and go on that journey with them. I think it's really helpful. And the reason why I'm
Yeah,
talking about it specifically, Shannon, is because I think it's really important that this audience knows, go watch Below the Belt.
it's on PBS.
It's on PBS.
And
Apology.
PBS Passport. Yeah.
Yeah.
It will be streaming on other platforms soon, but probably not before 2024.
Thank you for that. I think it's really important to share this with women around the world, because if you are maybe experience excruciating pain, do you want to talk a little bit about some of the symptomologies, just so that they would know why this matters to them and why they should not feel stigmatized?
Absolutely. So with endometriosis, for example, I mean, the most common symptom are debilitating periods, and it can be during your period, or debilitating pain. It can be during your period or actually other times of the month. GI symptoms are incredibly common. My first symptom actually were GI symptoms, or stomach aches, nausea, bloating, things like that. Fatigue, migraines, urinary symptoms, all of these things can be symptomatic of endometriosis. It can be one of those, it can be all of those, it can be a mixture of any of those. Like, it really is specific to the type of endometriosis and where it is on the body. Like, I have bowel endometriosis, which is it's probably why I have a lot of GI symptoms. Jenna, who is a subject in the film, she had diaphragmatic endometriosis, so on her diaphragm, and she had a lot of shortness of breath. So, there's not just one symptom. It really depends on where it is in your body, how advanced it is, and really how it manifests. So, the one thing I would say is, if you have symptoms that interfere with your life, for example, if you're a teenager and you have painful periods, the way if it's something that really should be investigated is if it interferes with your life in some way, and like really interferes with things that you would like to do, like playing sports or going to school, then that's not normal. If it's like a little bit of cramping, a little bit of cramping during periods is normal, and you can take maybe some Advil or NSAIDs, and if it goes away, then it's probably, that's probably normal. But if it really stops you from doing what you would like to be doing in your life, then it should be investigated.
Thank you. I think the other interesting thing I like that, thank you for sharing that for women. I think it's really important also that they know to ask, could this be endometriosis? You went on the journey 13 years later, you were told it was endometriosis. Like, how would you tell the women today? And regardless of age, I'd be curious, would you say at 15 or 16 or 20? Like, how would you tell them to go have this conversation with their doctor? That would be helpful.
I write down and make a list of maybe the 3 or 4 top points that I'd like to make with a doctor before I do. I think it's very common, and I've done this before, where, you're in front of the doctor and you just want to share everything, and it's just all this information, and it gets a little overwhelming. And the reality is, and this is after I've talked to healthcare providers, they're like, come in with your 2 or 3 main points that you want to make, and 2 or 3 main asks, and then let's tackle those together. That's a great place to start. Keep a journal, for example. People say that all the time, and I'd be like, I'm not doing that. Oh, that sounds like something else to do, another task. But it doesn't have to be like, laborious necessarily. Sometimes I'm just at my laptop and I have, my calendar open, and I notice something, and I'll just write a note down quickly on my calendar. Like, I'll notice, like, oh, I didn't feel great on this day, or I had this symptom. And then I'll go back, look at the month view, and there may be, something interesting to look at, so that it doesn't feel like another task to you. It's more of like, oh, let me just make a note of this quickly. And really go into the doctor's appointment feeling like they're your partner, and not, the end all be all, like, person who's going to answer and solve all of your problems. Really look at it as saying, let's find the answer to this together. And I actually had to do that a couple of weeks ago, where we had tried different things for, some of my GI symptoms. And the doctor, who I really like and respect, just like, oh, I don't know. Like, we don't know. I don't know the answer. And I just said, well, we don't know the answer yet, but let's keep, what are some other options we can try? And I could almost see the shift in the demeanor and the thinking, where he was like, right, okay, not yet, but we're gonna find it. So and that was, even, as and many people listening, we kind of all know that. We're like, okay, I'm gonna stay calm. I'm gonna stay calm. I'm not gonna be emotional. I'm gonna be diplomatic, and I'm gonna, like, keep my voice low. And it's just ridiculous that we as women actually have to do that, but it's a reality. And I'm playing, I'm like, okay, I'm going to stay calm, and I'm going to just say, no, let's just find the answer. I'm not going to get upset. And that's something I still do. Yeah. Today.
Well, I mean, you can't be a social impact producer and filmmaker. And, it's interesting, the lines and ways you have to walk. But I do want to shift a little. because I think we've talked a lot about the clinical side. I have to say, being this international, this incredible lawyer early in your career, kudos to you, very powerful. Managing endometriosis is horrible, debilitating pain is very impressive. Now becoming a filmmaker and a storyteller, but so artful. I have to say, guys, Below the Belt isn't just an amazing story, it's just artfully done. And so your lens into this. So you want to talk a little bit about the art of it for you and what it means to you as a filmmaker?
Yeah, of course. Thank you. One of the first things I learned in film school is making really powerful stories or telling a powerful film. It starts with really great collaborators. None of us are an island. And that is certainly the case with Below the Belt and any creative project I've ever, been a part of, is really finding like-minded, talented collaborators who also share a vision, but also bring really great skill and perspective to a project. And I've been very fortunate. I have great producers, cinematographers who are sensitive and understand how to tell stories visually. An incredible editor, Christopher Seward. It's interesting when I thought I was going to make this film, I was like, oh, I think I need a female editor. I just think I need a woman. She's got to understand this. But I was surprised. And my editor was actually male, who is married and has a daughter who happens to have endometriosis. But also,
Wait. Hold on a second. He's married, has a daughter who has endometriosis. Was that a coincidence, or did you?
It's something that they realized later.
Wow.
Yeah. But, at the end of the day, it was very interesting. It was a lesson that I learned. Like, no, actually, I shouldn't limit things like that in the beginning. It's really about the collaboration and the shared vision, and not other things that I have to say demographically. Oh, I need this person, I need that person. No, it really transcends that, and finding great collaborators. And really telling a story that's true. That's what we're all trying to do. That's what resonates with all of us. We're human. That's how we share our common humanity, is storytelling, and that human experience. And that's what we were going for with the film, so that people see their lives play out in front of them, even though obviously it's not their lives. They may or may not have endometriosis. They may or may not be in that city or that situation, but they recognize that shared experience and that shared emotion. And that is the power of film. And that is, I hope, the power of the movie, because at the end of the day, we're trying to change hearts and minds so that we can change policy.
That film moved me. I was beyond touched. It was a visceral experience when I left. I felt a call to do something. And so yeah, no, it's fantastic. And it will change policy. Can you talk a little bit about the fact that it is changing policy? Because we've been following Endo What and all of the work you're doing, and some amazing things are happening.
Of course, yes. I mean, so basically, we're making sure the right people see it and hear the discussion around the film. We screened for members of Congress in March of this year, in a screening on Capitol Hill, co-hosted by Elizabeth Warren and Mitt Romney, and attended by both politicians from both sides of the aisle. We screened in DC and in New York. We just screened at the World Economic Forum. We're screening for all 20,000 employees of the National Institutes of Health next month. So really part of this increased attention and newly announced agenda on increased research funding for women's health research. So this is all part of that. And working with, for example, the White House Gender Policy Council to make sure that women's health research is prioritized, and the film and the conversation around it are different tools to use to make sure that those goals are met. So again, it's about really working with allies and collaborators, because we all have a role to play in this.
Wow, that's amazing. So impressive, the work. I mean, the film is so touching, and it's like the power and the influence it has to affect change is just remarkable. And it's just I applaud you for the effort and what you're doing. It's amazing, amazing work. Do you have a next project before I ask the last question?
I'm researching now, but I'm taking a little bit of time to kind of think about where I want to go. It's going to be in the women's health space. It'll be in this space because there are just too many things that we need to look at. So I don't know yet. To be TBD.
Very, very exciting. I have some thoughts for you on that, but just thinking, I couldn't agree more that the women's health space needs as much, exposure and generating awareness. And I think that these stories, the power of telling these authentic stories of women and their experiences and outing that and destigmatizing it is a great place to start. And so congratulations on the amazing film and all of the work that it's, all of the influence, the way it's affecting change. I mean, you should be so proud. And now I have one last, I don't want to end this conversation. I find you so fascinating and the work so important. But this is your platform today to give women a message from around the world of all ages, of all backgrounds, and of all cultures. What do you want to say to them, Shannon?
I would just say, we all have a role to play, and everyone listening right now, you have a very unique skill set, perspective, experience that you can use and utilize to affect change in the world, even whether you realize it or not. So think about that and think about ways that you can be part of this conversation, because I can guarantee there is much value in you to lend to progress. So thank you.
Oh, wow. You have a role to play. Shannon Cohn, thank you so much. Everybody, listen, PBS, Below the Belt, an amazing film on women's journeys through this debilitating disease and how they, think about how we can really change the timing to diagnosis of endometriosis. Thank you so much, Shannon. You're just brilliant. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. It's been an honor.
Thanks for listening to Under the Sisterhood. If you haven't already, please give us a quick rating and review on Apple or Spotify. And make sure to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn so you can hear from more amazing women. This podcast is created and hosted by Under the Sisterhood LLC and Elizabeth Elfenbein, produced by Elizabeth Elfenbein and Matt Butler, and edited by Matt Butler. The music is by Ayla Schaefer. Her song, Rose.